It is phenomenal, according to the Sleep Foundation, that 4 out of 10 Australians wake up exhausted. So put your hand up if you're one of those people who woke up exhausted this morning. Yep, pretty much everybody, including some members of our panel. I'll introduce them in a moment. It costs the economy about $66 billion, according to a Deloitte research project that was done recently. So it's costing us a lot personally, costing the economy a lot as well. And in terms of that health and well-being conversation, we've spoken a lot about food, we've spoken a lot about exercise, and I think really sleep is the next frontier because it affects everybody. Everyone's interested in it. All of our panellists were saying the minute someone finds out they work in sleep or they're sleep deprived, like Matt, that's all they want to ask. Most common question you get asked?
How do you get up that early every day?
Yeah, what time do you get up? I think that's pretty common for anyone who works certainly in early morning TV and radio. Well, we'll start with Matt. He is a breakfast announcer on Nova. You might hear him on the mornings on the way in, reads the news, got married on the weekend, so you're sleep deprived in more ways than one. Yes. God knows why he's not on his honeymoon already, but we'll get to that later on as well. Billy at the end there, Billy Kane from IKEA, he's the bedroom's core leader. So if you want to know anything about the other section of the setup here at North Bondi Surf Lifesaving Club in terms of the mattress selector, he is your man. He's the expert. He's already had me fill out the survey. I'm on board. And then we have 2 researchers with us who can really provide that scientific perspective on all of the questions you have about sleep this morning, about the relationship between sleep and well-being, and about your food as well, which we touched on this morning. Dr. Thea Brejzek, which is the German pronunciation. We've had that conversation already. Professor for spatial theory at UTS, and working very, very closely with IKEA and UTS and the Future Living Lab, and we'll delve into that and the future of sleep moving forward to 2030. And also Dr. Elise Facer-Childs, who's just moved here 2 months ago from Birmingham, so welcome.
Thank you.
Moved to Melbourne, I don't know why when you look at that, but anyway, with the Monash Institute of Cognitive and Clinical Neurosciences. Pretty self-explanatory what Matt and Billy do, but we might get the both of you to explain some of your research just so everyone has a grounding in what you do. So, Elise, you're a sleep researcher. It's been an interest of yours from when you were sort of 18, moving through your medical degree and PhD. So what is it you actually study?
So what I study is, some people might not know what this is, but if anyone can, I will be very impressed. Has anyone heard of chronobiology?
Wow, there you go.
Are
Model
you a
student.
researcher?
No, but I'm a journalist and I interview
Right.
by email that I'm up for.
Oh, right.
That's cheating. That's definitely cheating.
So chrono comes from the word chronos. Chronos was the Greek god of time. So I study biological time. And we have many biological rhythms. One of them is sleep. So what I study is basically what times of day we perform our best and we feel our best because of when we sleep, when we eat, when we do exercise, when we have caffeine. So I look at performance in general over the course of the day and how sleep affects it.
Wow. And Thea, you don't study sleep specifically, but you're studying really the future of how we'll live our lives through UTS. Can you explain a bit about your work?
That's exactly right. So I'm a professor for spatial theory at UTS, which sounds terribly abstract and complicated. It's not that abstract and complicated. It just means that I think about space, I write about space, and I also lead design studios to do with space. But I'm also a director in the IKEA UTS Future Living Lab that we founded in November last year, so we're still very young. We worked on the future of the living room. At the moment, we're working on the future of sleep. And you see 2 enigmatic objects here that I will talk about a little bit later. We create prototypes. So we're not looking at the sleep itself. We're looking at the spaces in which sleep can happen, how these have changed over time, how they will change in the future, remembering that the future is tomorrow, not in 15 years or in 20 years. So we're looking at very rapid changes in sleep spaces. And we work with students, we work with other academics, we publish, we have exhibitions, and we have an exhibition here of the student work at 4 o'clock,
4 o'clock, yeah.
this afternoon, if you're still here or if you would like to come back.
Wonderful. We will delve into everyone's research areas and expertise as well. If anyone has any questions, feel free to just throw up a hand throughout the conversation. We'll chat for about 30 minutes, so really want to give as much time as possible for your questions. Hands up if you're a morning person. Okay, and a night owl? Most of you. So Elise, you've actually conducted, it's a civilised time to start at 10 o'clock, isn't it? You've actually conducted some interesting research into the difference between morning people and night owls, and I'm quite interested to know, can you actually switch it around? Can you change your behaviour too?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. I think, well, from that, your question before, we all know that some of us are better in the morning and some of us love burning the midnight oil. But we often don't think about how and why, and the latest research that we've done has actually looked at how these two different groups differ in terms of their brain function. So we studied people over a number of weeks, and then we got them in for MRI scans, and we actually found that there are key differences in the brain between morning larks and night owls. So I think that there's a big sort of unawareness of these two different groups and just thinking maybe night owls are lazy. But there is biological reasons behind this. These two groups differ in terms of their physiology. There's genetic links. So, you know, for those night owls out there, there are scientific reasons behind why you feel like not very good in the mornings and why you prefer the evenings. In terms of manipulating it and shifting it, you can potentially do that. I mean, I think an extreme night owl would never be able to completely become a morning lark. But I think a lot of us have experienced when you go through different stages in your lives, potentially at university, there's a big shift towards being more of a night owl, an evening type. Then when you come out of that...
scientific, is it? I didn't realise. Wow.
And then when you go into a job, you tend to be forced into certain schedules. So you do get a shift maybe towards being more of a morning person. What I would say is that the majority of us tend to not sleep when our bodies want to. So who here uses an alarm to wake up in the mornings? Most people, right? So what you're doing there is you're forcing your body to wake up before it actually wants to. And what a lot of us do is use an alarm to wake up during the week for work, and then at the weekend you have a massive lie-in. And that's because you accumulate a sleep debt over the course of the week because you're not sleeping as much as you should. But what that actually does to the body, if you're sleeping at different times, it's a term that our colleagues in Munich have come up with called social jet lag. So it's the equivalent to, say, you get up at 6 in the morning during the week for work, and then on the weekends you sleep until 10. That's 4 hours difference. It's kind of the equivalent to every Friday night you jump on a plane, you fly 4 time zones away, and every Sunday you fly back. That's what it's doing to your body, that 4-hour difference. It's the equivalent to kind of flying across 4 time zones. So these Monday blues, that's an actual thing. You get back to Monday.
So on the weekends, you should be waking up at a similar time to when you are during the week? Is that the...
I think you have to try and get a balance because a lot of us are sleep deprived. We don't sleep enough. So in a way, we do need to try and get more sleep. But yes, it's better to get up at a more similar time and try and go to bed a bit earlier so you sort of maximise that sleep opportunity.
I will call you at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
and we can discuss your theory on getting up at
Well, this is the thing. So Matt and I both get up early. I know it's not a competition, but I get up at 3. He gets up at 4.
Usually I get to be the martyr in the room, and you get up at 4, and then I saw you were hosting.
You're like... So, you know, obviously we don't want to necessarily get up at 3 or 4 in the weekend. Do you struggle with that, Matt? Do you try to sleep in on the weekends? What do you try to do? How do you manage that?
I mean, not getting up to an alarm is just mentally rewarding.
Yeah.
And so even though my body wakes me up at 7:30, I go, wow, that's 3.5 hours longer than I would have otherwise been asleep. But my now wife is the total opposite. She gets up at the same time as me, which is wonderful for patterns of behaviour for living. But she'll sleep to 10 or 10:30 on a weekend, and I don't understand how she does it. It's greedy. And
Now
it's
you know
rude.
there's science behind
Yeah.
it.
And it's annoying because you want to get up and start the day, right?
But yeah, for me that mental knowing that there's no alarm is
Yeah.
3/4 of the win.
And did you consider yourself a morning person before you started doing
Yeah,
this?
I have no issue. I'm not an 8 hours sleep person. I suspect we'll get to that. I'm fine with sort of 5 or 6. And I'm very happy as long as I've had a bit of a nap in the afternoon, getting up early and going after it. Whereas, again, my other half is the total opposite, and the only time we ever have a fight is I draw great joy from how tired she is in the morning, and I seem to be more perky and chipper with how tired she is. And so for me, getting up and doing it is great because I just want to be. I just realised I had one of those quinoa bowl things. I think I got stuff in my teeth. If I do, please, they're delicious. The salmon one's also great. But yeah, for me, mornings aren't so much the problem.
Yeah.
It's telling yourself you have to go to bed at night. Because otherwise at 4 a.m. you'll hate life even more than you already do.
Here's a hot tip. I've only been married for a year. Stop doing that soon, otherwise you'll be divorced.
Really?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, good to
Just
know.
my personal opinion.
You just picked up a really good point, and what you tend to get a lot is people asking you about sleeping in couples and if you've got a night owl with a morning lark and if that's really bad. But actually, I think sometimes we can flip it the other way round, because if you think of parenthood, I don't know, people that have kids here, you could see that as actually really beneficial. If somebody prefers the morning and can do the morning shift, someone prefers the evening, then you're covering both times. So it's not all bad if you sleep at, really different times. Bear that in mind.
You mentioned something about sleep debt there, because I don't know whether that's a misconception that you can catch up on the weekends. Can you? Is there such a thing as putting more in the bank?
So not really. It's not like, you can just bank it up and then have a big 14-hour sleep. If you do sleep 14 hours at the weekend, it's probably because your body does really need it. But again, as we talked about before, it's not just about how much sleep you're getting, but at the right times. So you're kind of desynchronizing your body when you keep chopping and changing between sleeping longer and shorter and earlier and later. I mean, if you can sleep a bit longer, then that's great. But I would say instead of sleeping in, try and go to bed earlier and then wake up at a similar time.
So Thea, you're looking towards the future of sleep, and as you say, the future is this afternoon or tomorrow. But it's an interesting conversation, because if you think back 20 years ago, really we didn't have devices next to our beds, we weren't on email all the time, we didn't have the constant pressure of perhaps so much work and social media on top of that. I mean, is that going to be amplified, do you think, as we move into the future? Or do you think we're going to see people stepping back from that?
I think it's already here. I think that sleep technology, and Elise will attest to that, has become, almost a normal part of our sleeping rhythm, sleeping and waking rhythm. So many of us have a sleep app or have a calming sea noise app or something like that to help you sleep, or special lights, etc., etc. But I think what is really changing is, and I can see that from the young designers I work with, that they live in a gig economy. So they are used to short-time design work that does not adhere anymore to regular hours. And they jump from contract to contract to job, from job to project to project. This means that sleeping becomes much more irregular. It means that often work is being brought into the bedroom. And it also means that sleep doesn't only happen in the bedroom. And of course, if sleep doesn't only happen in the bedroom, is it still called a bedroom? Or is it called a sleep space? And then, of course, we're thinking, where can those sleep spaces be? So we've been looking at autonomous vehicles. And autonomous vehicles, we might say this is the future, but really it is just around the corner. So if we are seated in an autonomous vehicle, we could be sleeping, couldn't we? But how? What would that sleep look like? Would we be lying down? Would we be sitting up? What about sleeping in aeroplanes? We're reading about scenarios that are maybe not quite so attractive about vertical sleeping in aeroplanes. Is maybe not really what we want. But how about we design it really well and it would become really attractive? So it's very much about where will we sleep in the not very distant future at all, and what will those spaces look like? And then I'm particularly interested in atmospheric conditions in space. So then we will say, what kind of multi-sensory qualities do these spaces need? So it's not only a pragmatic sleep, because sleep is seen as something that is unproductive, where we're not working. and fulfilling our civic duty. But it's a passive kind of thing that should be really shortened as much as possible. But if we say sleep is just so important for our well-being, so even if we're a shift worker or we're in the gig economy and we have interrupted sleeps, the quality of sleep is very important. And this means that the atmosphere in whatever sleep space we will be designing, we'll be coming up with, is very, very important. And atmosphere doesn't happen by itself. So our atmosphere is something that is also being designed, it is being constructed. Technology plays a very large role, but also, you know, color. I'm looking at textures, colors, materiality, lighting, sound, smell. So that's what we call a multisensory environment. And that, of course, for a designer is a fantastic challenge.
I can see Billy now dedicating a whole section of the new IKEA catalogue to sleep spaces instead of bedrooms now. It's a new buzzword, 2 words. How does that change, all the things that Thea was talking about there, how does that influence your designs at IKEA? I mean, there's a beautiful light in there, for example, it's a mood light. You can switch down the levels of the light, the textures, the different colours, I guess, keeping a calming atmosphere. How does that influence what
I think
work you're doing?
over the last couple of years, we've been really shifting our focus to sleep. And we do a lot of life-at-home visits, like we do 400 life-at-home visits here in Australia. So we really listen to how people...
How good is that guy going downstairs?
Yeah,
I know.
He is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing well. So we go out and we actually listen to customers and find out what their needs, but their frustrations are in different areas of their home. And in bedrooms in particular, they've got a lot of frustrations there. However, when we ask them what's the most important aspect of their bedroom, of course the top of mind is their mattress, but then also their pillow. But what they don't consider is then all the different elements that you've just mentioned as well. We live in busy cities now where our space is becoming smaller. Noise is louder. We've got light pollution, noise pollution. And all these things, even though the bed's probably the most important part of the bedroom, but it's only the platform, it's only the base. You've got to then consider the other elements. You've got to think about the noise and the light. So of course then for IKEA, we don't just sell beds, we don't just sell mattresses. We now are of course looking at the whole environment and how we can help customers create the perfect sleeping environment. And it does come down to the lighting. And those mood light, I mean, I'm sure everyone here gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's as if we've got that clock in our mind and you've got to go to the bathroom. But the first thing you tend to do is switch the light back on. And of course, then that wakes you right up. So going back to bed and trying to get back to sleep, it's a bit more of a challenge. So thinking more about smaller sensory lights that actually don't waken you up as much. So small touches like that do make a big difference, of course, to your sleeping habits. So looking at more of the holistic approach,
Yeah, touching on that figure, I think by 2050, 70% of the world's populations will be living in cities. So they're living in denser populations, closer together. It's getting noisier as well. So I imagine that's a factor as well in terms of people living in smaller spaces, being able to hear their neighbours and dealing with that as well.
I mean, of course, our neighbour downstairs.
Our neighbour downstairs and the dog outside.
Would have an impact on your sleep if you heard that. So of course, I think it's by creating the perfect environment. And we are, of course, trying to educate our customers on creating the perfect environment and not about the mattress, of course.
I'm guessing it's sort of parlour washing in the corner because that's my bedroom. I'm going to fix that when I get home. Elise, optimum number of hours of sleep. Is it 8? Is it 5 or 6? Like Matt was saying, it's different. Is there a magic number for everybody? Who would get 8 hours sleep here? Lucky devils. Yeah. Rowan back at the sound desk is like, I'm living the best life ever. It's loving life. 8 hour special back there.
Well, so people tend to generalize when it comes to optimum sleep. We all need 8 hours sleep, or we all should be sleeping then and waking up then. Whereas actually there's huge differences. So if I were to just ask all of you what shoe size you are, you wouldn't all be the same. Right? There's clear differences. Look around, we all look different, we all think differently. So why should we all be expected to sleep the same? And that's when it comes to sleep duration, there's this number 8, but some people actually don't need that much sleep. Some people need more. If you don't wake up naturally. You still use an alarm. You still feel tired. If you were left to your own devices, you're going to sleep differently. It probably means you're not getting enough sleep. But there is no kind of one size fits all. So yeah, some people need more than 8 hours. Some people need a little bit less. I mean, the stories that you hear about people sleeping only 4 hours, Trump and stuff, I mean, that I would say is probably not the best thing. I think people surviving off 4 hours sleep would be having some negative impact. But yeah, I think we kind of know when we haven't had a good night's sleep or when we're not sleeping enough. Probably the majority of our society isn't sleeping as much as we should. But yeah, so there is kind of no one size fits all.
Fits all. I'm not a napper. You're a napper.
I was actually going to, that was my next question to you to hijack your role, because you hijacked my credit for getting up early. I love napping. Live to nap. Haven't seen a plane take off whilst being on it for years, and it's the best. But in order to, so I get to bed at about 10, get up at 4. But in order to be able to do that comfortably, I love to have a nap in the middle of the afternoon. But there seems to be very differing views on what constitutes a good nap. Some people like, you got to...
20 minutes. I mean, who's napping for 20 minutes? No one.
No.
Are you napping for 20 minutes?
I am.
I'm
You
looking
really?
for a power nap.
Well,
so
you're
there's
the
multiple
expert.
tiers.
That doesn't
multiple
count.
tiers. See, 15 minutes is your power nap on the couch because you don't want to get too comfortable. If you want to get comfortable but you can't get up, you go under the bed but you stay above the doona. And if you're committing to a sleep, you're going
You're in
under the
there,
shit.
and you're in there for hours.
Closing the thing, and I'll see you in 2.5 hours. Is there a optimal time, and also that REM cycle thing that people talk about, like waking up at the lighter part of your REM cycle so you're more alert? Is that a thing? Is that a real thing?
Kind of. I'm going to take bits of what you just said and then...
Call you an idiot publicly.
So our sleep isn't as simple as, we go to sleep and then we wake up. We actually go through a number of sleep cycles during a night. And some of you may know this, but it lasts about 90 to 120 minutes depending on the individual. So if you think of a sleep cycle being an hour and a half, and during that you go into different stages of sleep. So there's non-rapid eye movement sleep, which has 3 stages, and then rapid eye movement sleep. And you go through these stages during that hour and a half. And what you tend to get, I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever had a nap for about an hour, and then you wake up and you feel even worse. You think, why did I even nap in the first place? You feel really groggy. And that's because you've basically woken up smack bang in the middle of your deep sleep, which is stage 3 of your non-rapid eye movement sleep. And that's why you feel like that. It's something called sleep inertia, which is the physiological state of impaired alertness. And a lot of us get it first thing in the morning as well, because if you use an alarm, you sometimes wake up in that slow wave sleep, that deep sleep. That's why you feel groggy, and it takes you a bit of time to feel good again. So with the napping, I would say it depends on what time of day you're napping, where you're going to nap. Probably touch on some of the things that you've talked about here.
Just as long as it's on an IKEA couch, it can be anywhere. It can be a beautiful
Under
couch.
the doona, on top of the doona. But there is the 20-minute nap basically means that you don't go into your deep sleep if you limit it to that. So you don't wake up during that deep sleep. So there are some quite restorative effects you can get from a power nap. And if you think of it in terms of, if you have a full night's sleep and then you have a petrol tank and it's full first thing in the morning because you've had a good night's sleep, and then throughout the day it's going down, and by the time it's empty you need to sleep again. If it's coming down and then you have a nap, it goes up a little bit. So it takes a little bit more time to get to the bottom and you need to sleep again. So if it's going down and it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you have a nap for an hour and a half, there's a full sleep cycle. So you've gone back up, so it's going to take a lot longer. So when you come to the time you want to go to sleep, it might take a bit longer because your petrol tank's still going.
Which is why I don't nap, because I feel like you're sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul. You might have a nap during the day, but then you end up not being able to sleep at night time. Yeah.
That's one of the great analogies about time, by the way.
Yeah.
We'll never not think of a petrol tank with sleep ever again.
Yeah, every time we fill it with petrol. Thea, you have an interesting model next to you, which could actually be the future of sleep, and I think both Matt and I would love one of these at our workplaces. Essentially, it's a pod where in the future people will be able to enter and have that deep sleep. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it was designed by 2 of our students, one interior architecture student, one product design student. We in the lab, when we work with students, we always pair interior architecture and product design, which would make perfect sense to you from IKEA, wouldn't it? So that we're working at the object scale, but we're also thinking about the environment as a whole. And so this was the original model, or we can say it's a prototype, actually. And this was meant for, or is meant for, hospital workers who are on shift work. And the students called it embryo, as a kind of, it is a refuge, it is a protection. They made the little cushion, and I can't connect it now, but there's lighting inside. There's a very beautiful red, pinkish lighting inside that will react. That is an interactive light. So when you step inside this, we've called it the egg, but originally it was called the embryo. So when you step inside and when you make yourself comfortable, the light will react with you. And of course, there's always the possibility for interactive sound, soundscapes and sound environments as well. So this means that somebody who is in a high-stress job in a hospital is able to disappear for 20 minutes, for half an hour, after a very, very long shift that nurses and doctors have to do in hospitals. And so to regenerate, to disappear, but not to have not to close a door, so not to be completely away, so still to be in contact, but to have a level of privacy. And that, I think, is also something that's very important for a good quality sleep. And if you're still here this afternoon at 4, you will see that many of the projects deal with how can I get a minimum of privacy in those fragmented pockets of sleep that I might be able to get when I commute, when I have a short break at work, etc. Or when I'm on the aeroplane. I always think I do a lot of long-haul flights to Europe, and usually not in the first class suite where I can close the door. And I'm finding that the most exhausting thing is that I have no privacy for 26 hours. And that is a lot. So it's obviously something that would be interesting to hear your opinion, but it's obviously also something that's connected to sleep, a certain level of darkness, but also a certain level of privacy, because of course sleeping is also a private act, isn't it? So this was the small one, and then for the exhibition we thought we would like it larger, and in terms of technology it's interesting for its actual design. It's a very beautiful design, it's a very organic design, but also we 3D printed it, and it worked really well. We were a little bit nervous because it takes a long time to 3D print such complex objects, but the workshop did really well, and the students did really well because they have to hand in the CAD file, and if there's a tiny, tiny detail, not wrong, but let's say imprecise, on the CAD file, it would be exaggerated in the 3D printed model. So I think we did pretty well, and this was shown yesterday in the lab, but I haven't even looked at whether we've got lighting in there. We'll work that out.
And they have some well-rested
We'll work
guinea
it out in the
pigs,
afternoon.
when you can test them in the lab.
But you must say it's an attractive object, isn't it?
Very, very cool.
But it does look futuristic as well. And I think that connects us to this space, not only from the color, from the beautiful blue. We're also in blue, Matt. See, you're also
very
in
well
blue.
coordinated.
We have the blue. We have the blue of the sea. But
it's very calming.
so it's a
isn't
very
it,
calming
it's a
color, and
beautiful
we do
invention.
associate blue with slowing down the breath and relaxing.
We'll be able to
relaxing
hear
and
more about that at
calming.
4 o'clock when the students
Oh,
from
you
UTS
will,
are here to
absolutely.
explain it.
But
I
it's
want to
funny 'cause
touch.
They've also started in the UK. I think it was Travel Lodge that did a survey based on the colour of your room as well. And based on those lighter, calmer shades,
Yes.
they found like light blue was the colour that gave you the optimal amount of sleep, and purple being maybe the colour that you shouldn't dress your bedroom in,
Right.
because that gave you the least amount of sleep. So, sorry. just
Definitely not a
something else.
great paint
Yeah.
colour, I don't think, burgundy. Billy, We touched earlier on the different cultural aspects of sleep. When you go to, I don't know if anyone's ever been to an IKEA store in China, there are people actually sleeping in the beds, which is apparently something that IKEA encourages.
Yeah, it's. I think it's a good advertisement for our product. Yeah. We actually, I think when we first opened up in our store in China, we struggled with it a little bit as well. And the main reason was because it prevented other customers, potential customers who were interested in actually buying the beds and testing them to try the product. And it wasn't even just in the mattress studio, but it was also in our sofa compact as well.
And they're asleep. They're not just napping. Like
they're out for it.
Out for the
And
count.
it tends to be more the husbands, because then it allows the wife to go away and then do whatever she wants and spend as much as she wants. So actually it works in our favour from time to time.
You could have set up a husband sleeping zone at the front.
And there is times when we
deal with
have
it
to
that
go up
way.
and kind of gently persuade them to move on, because there's other customers who are looking to test and try the product. So,
But I think in Asia, it is a napping culture. You see a lot of it on public transport, and perhaps that's due to the duration of the day. I wonder also with the siesta in European cultures, is that something that perhaps we could incorporate here in Australia in the future?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, who's on board with that? Bit of sangria, bit of a siesta. Do you notice when in your studies, Elise, a stark difference between the way, say, Scandinavian cultures sleep to European cultures, more Southern European, to how we deal with it here?
Yeah, well, you do see quite a range of differences between countries and cultures, and part of that is in urban versus rural environments. One of the big things, the use of artificial light, that has a big effect on our body clocks and our sleep. So you tend to get big differences there. In terms of including it, like I said earlier, not one thing works for everybody. So if you try to, I guess, enforce it, it might not be too good. But I think combining all of this together, what would be really nice to see in the future is being able to give people the option. So to have these kind of things, so when people do feel like they need a nap, that they have an opportunity to go and have it. But some people don't like naps, and if you tell them to nap, then it might make things even worse, because they'll sit there and think about how they're not sleeping, and then that creates anxiety, and then they can't sleep. So, really kind of trying to be flexible. And I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to promote in my research, is these individual differences, and how maybe our latest research looking at the typical working day and how that maybe doesn't fit for night owls. If we can increase the flexibility and take these differences into account, that could have a considerable impact.
Billy, what do you find people when they come and try a bed? What are they looking for? Do they, is it the pillow? Is it the mattress? What is the perfect combination that people think? Is it the more money you spend, perhaps, on a mattress? People think it will do the trick.
yeah, I think nowadays, because people are more aware of the connection with sleep and health and well-being, they're a bit more open to pay more of a premium. So I think the biggest misconception tends to be that I have to buy the highest price mattress. And I've been in this industry for quite a few years now, and it frustrates me a lot, actually, when I hear. I had an example of one of my friends who was in a large department store in the city, and they bought a mattress. The initial price was $10,000. However, they were so ecstatic because they actually got it for half price. So they paid $5,000. But I was still thinking, we were still overcharged by $4,000. So I think people do connect a good quality night's sleep with a high price tag. And I think it's just not me. I mean, I get frustrated when I hear about these stories, but also Choices just came out as well. And they did a massive survey on the mattress industry. And they seen that consumers were paying probably far too much for the mattresses. They've seen that also retailers were charging far too much. There's a bit of a monopoly going on, because most of the mattresses that we see in most of the department stores come from a couple of manufacturers. But the insides are the same, but the outsides are different. So of course it's quite hard for consumers to then compare. So there's quite a high premium that people tend to pay. And they actually also found that there was some massive markups by about 200%.
Wow.
So in IKEA, we believe that everyone deserves a great night's sleep, but you shouldn't have to pay over the odds.
What would be, because
You just bought a new mattress for your...
Yeah.
I did spend, because I was like, well, sleep's so important, so I
Yeah,
will
I
spend.
imagine it's like anti-aging and weight loss
Yeah.
and sleep.
Yeah.
If someone tells you it's going to work, you're in.
100%.
You know?
And obviously, if someone tells you the $6,000 one will work, the $10,000 one will work so much better, which was my logic. Thank you for meeting you now.
Did you get it half price?
So
Maybe come and see us next time.
this has been a sad day. What should you look for then when you are trying a bed? Like, what are the things that make it a good mattress as opposed to an expensive mattress?
I think, to be honest with you, I think when you actually cut a mattress open and actually start to see
I mean,
different...
like, as someone who's going into the shop with a saw,
yeah.
I just got to say,
Step one, don't go into the shop with a saw.
Hopefully most retailers will be able to take you through the different layers. But you'll find that the interior definitely does seem to be the same. It's more the exterior that's different. So it's really just maybe asking those questions. Is it a pocket spring? What's the layers on top made of? And that's the easiest way to make the comparisons. Of course, a lot of companies, because they want you to pay that high price tag, they will say that they're working with innovative new materials and fabrics, and so that makes it easier for you to part with your hard-earned cash. But at the end of the day, it comes down to its springs and foam. And I think, to be honest, for me, to get the best night's sleep, always try and go as natural as possible. We have a mattress in our range, which is outside. It's the Henderson mattress. And it was IKEA's attempt to actually making a vegan bed. However, we
It's a
failed.
vegan sleep space.
Yeah. we failed because one of the products in it, we try and also minimise the amount of chemicals that we put into our mattresses. So we don't use any flame retardant products, but there's a natural fabric, wool, which is a fantastic flame retardant product. So we use that. So we would say that's the best probably type of mattress to buy. And it retails at $7.99 for a queen size, so if you're interested. We have them in stock along in Tempe, actually. Caesar at the back of the room can take your
Can
order
help you
today
out.
for you. Yes.
ready to take
And
an
just
order.
take that mattress, put it on top of the $10,000
Yeah.
one you've already purchased, and it'd be like Princess and the Pea mat. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask the panel on their own sleep habits, if you want, or anything to do with IKEA? Yep.
I was going to ask, how long is the lifespan of a mattress?
Oh, good point.
Ah,
Yeah.
good
And can
question.
you flip it over to extend the
Yeah.
lifespan?
Yeah.
Spin it round.
There's the whole lifespan of a mattress. It's funny because we do offer a 25-year guarantee. We do not expect and
Not
we
if
would
you
not
saw it in half,
recommend
Matt, by the way.
you to
Or if
sleep
it
in it
needs
for
to change
25 years. But the whole testing for 25 years is we put this roller, 140 kilos, over it for 50,000 times, which replicates the 25 years, just to see if it lives up to that. So I would always think about the guarantee. There's many companies that do give a guarantee, but maybe not as much as 25 years. So that's the one thing I would definitely consider.
Do you flip it over?
There's, we don't make our mattresses, and a lot of companies nowadays no longer do that. Because how many people had a flip-over mattress? Maybe hands
No,
in the air?
mostly they have a sort of soft
Yeah.
top. You can't really
And
flip
how many
them
people
over, can
actually flipped the mattress?
you?
Oh,
Oh,
okay. It tends to be a waste of money. To be honest with you, in material. So to enable to get the price as low as possible, the most retailers now or manufacturers are just producing it on the one side. And of course you can turn it, but won't flip it.
Yeah. Good question. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good segue actually, because living in Bondi, you walk along the streets and there are mattresses all along the streets where people have moved out. What is IKEA's policy, or what are you thinking about in order to kind of close the loop on your life cycle of your mattresses? Because they are really hard to
Recycle.
recycle.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of them at the dump and
Yeah.
just can't do anything.
That's great, because it's a topic that's we've been talking about for many hours, and of course it is a big issue in terms of for the environment. And I live in Waterloo, and I run every morning to the Tempe store, and I do go the back ways, and there's plenty of lanes that I pass, and you see a lot of mattresses propped up against the wall. So, and we know those mattresses are going to go to landfill. So it goes against our policy, of course. So we work with a company called Soft Landing here in Australia, where we will take your old mattress away. We will charge $30, but it's we don't earn anything from that, and that's then broken up, and everything in it is then reused again. So that's our approach of how we work with that and preventing stuff to go to landfill.
It's interesting. It's a real conversation that's happening, though. You do see that with a lot of brands and an increasing awareness, particularly around in Bondi, I suppose, with such a transient population of people moving in and out, and no one wants someone else's cruddy backpacker, well-used mattress. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi. During the night, some people wake and they fall asleep straight away. Other people, once they wake, find it very difficult to fall asleep. What's the mechanism that differentiates between those people? What's happening on a kind of hormonal, chemical level that creates a situation where one person can fall asleep easily and the other person can stay awake for a couple of hours? And is there anything you can do about it for the person who's laying awake?
It's a good question. It's actually also different for women. So I think it's 50% of women struggle to actually get back to sleep. I think 38% of men actually have an issue with that. Elise, perhaps you could answer that question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's very difficult to answer because sleep is so complex. It's not, there are certain people that wake up and can't get back to sleep and then some that wake up and stay awake longer. And you tend to get differences depending on how you're feeling, psychological impact. In terms of maybe one way to explain it mechanistically, people that are stressed sometimes, I don't know if you've heard of the hormone cortisol. So cortisol is one of the hormones that regulates our sleep-wake cycle. So it's meant to come up in the morning and help us wake up and then be low at night. It's also an acute stress hormone, so you tend to get, if you're stressed or if you're worried and thinking about things, you can get cortisol pulses during the night, and then that wakes you up. For some people, maybe that goes down quicker. For some, it stays up, and then if you wake up and then you start thinking, oh, damn it, I've woken up, and now I can't get to sleep, and now my alarm's going to go off in 2 hours, you can imagine you're getting more and more stressed, your cortisol's coming up, so it's going to take longer to come back down. So that could be one thing, but, there's so many factors at play here. It depends, what you've done the day before, how you've been feeling, what you've eaten, when you've had caffeine, maybe when you've exercised. So without doing maybe a more in-depth analysis, I wouldn't know exactly, but things that you can do, well, the simplest thing is don't beat yourself up for waking up. Don't, as you said earlier, turn all the lights on because that's going to wake you up. And try and use techniques, maybe if you do mindfulness or meditation or some sounds that will help you try and get back to sleep. But definitely don't get even more anxious for waking up because that's not going to do any help.
Meditation is an interesting one, and I'm sure you're seeing that become more and more popular. Can that have a real influence on people's sleep? There's huge benefits, I think, to meditation and mindfulness. Again, it's not for everybody. The one thing to say, I think, is that meditation shouldn't be used necessarily to get to sleep. It's not. It shouldn't send you to sleep. It's the benefit of it, I think, is for other things, to try and process those memories and thoughts, and do that maybe before you're planning to go to sleep, and then your sleeping environment and creating that optimum space to then prepare and go to sleep. Any other questions? Yes.
How does lack of sleep manifest? You mentioned Trump. His personality's...
Bam. There you go. We just
Things
need to
took a
send him
turn.
to sleep.
I'm not sure how much I should say. Yeah.
But there's other people that profess, Kevin Rudd, Alan Jones, they can survive on 4 hours sleep.
Wasn't it Churchill did 20 minutes
Condoleezza
on?
Rice
Never
used to
actually
sleep very little. So I guess it can manifest itself with different personalities. There might be a few other issues at play perhaps there, but in different people.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to comment on specific people, but you get different types of sleepers. So there's something called polyphasic sleep, which is we have sort of one sleep phase and then an awake phase, but polyphasic sleep is when you have multiple sleep phases. So maybe being asleep for 20 minutes and then awake for 2 hours and then asleep for 20 minutes. From a scientific point of view, that's not the best thing to do. I know people say that they survive off that amount of sleep. If you don't sleep, so studies on rats have shown that if you deprive rats of sleep, after 22 days, they die. I mean, those studies haven't been done on humans. You wouldn't get the ethics to do that.
No, but sleep deprivation
you know,
is often used as a torture method.
It was used as a form of torture. And if you don't sleep enough, you're going to just fall asleep. You know, you can't stay awake continuously. You will just fall asleep. So I think surviving off 4 hours sleep, you could probably survive, but you'd be at a really suboptimal level. And I think many of us are probably functioning at a suboptimal level, and we don't even know what that next level would be because we haven't tapped into it. And I do a lot of work with elite athletes to try and basically get that next level. So instead of just, you know, surviving, we see sleep as a luxury. I think people say, you know, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, what I've just said, if you don't sleep, you will die. So, you know, there's a level of sleep you need just for basic functioning. And then I think if you actually get optimal sleep, we're going to be, tapping into another level.
Well, the subject of elite athletes, Matt.
You got me, 100%.
No, actually something else. Do you feel, I mean, I often, when people ask me what it's like to work shift work, I say it's like being jet lagged. You feel like you're jet lagged all the time.
Yes.
Do you feel like it's no reflection on your fantastic work at Nova, but do you feel like you work at a optimum level, suboptimum level? Do you realise when you really need to take a nap or have more sleep?
Yeah, I mean, I think if what you're doing is adrenaline and deadline based, then I've not found being tired impacts my ability to just work during the pressure hours. It's when you then settle down, and once the pressure of, say, your show ending or whatnot ends, that's when all of a sudden you start to go, oh, this is a really slow, tough day. One of the things that I am curious, because we were talking earlier, Eddie's currently on a social media detox, which is all very in vogue at the moment, but I'm one of these people that will just Instagram until I go to sleep, and then Instagram as soon as I wake up, just scrolling mindlessly.
It's like a counselling session for Matt.
Yeah, but is there, how detrimental is having your phone right next to your bed as a sleep pattern problem for well, I guess everyone probably, most people?
I think all of us probably do that in the evenings. We get our laptops out and watch TV and use our phones. And touching on earlier, the blue, so probably a lot of you have heard, but blue light is the cells in our eye are most sensitive to blue light, and that is basically what is meant to wake us up. And funnily enough, that's the kind of light that's emitted from all of these devices. So what we're doing in the evening, the sun goes down and our body thinks, oh, yep, it's time to prepare to get to sleep. But then we turn all the lights on and we get out our screens and we tell the brain to be awake. So this use of technology in the evenings is a big problem, I think, and it's pushing us later and later. So it is bad.
Yeah.
There are things that you can do. There's software that you can download on your laptop that changes the type of light that's emitted on your phones as well. There's certain things that you can do to try and help. You can wear sort of glasses that block the blue light.
We were talking about this morning. Don't buy the glasses, just turn off the phone.
But yeah, if you think of the combination of things, so that light waking you up as well as, the actual impact of going on Instagram and interacting socially at that time.
Because everything you're seeing is making you think.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So if you can, limit it. I know it's not going to be easy, but it probably will help.
Just lean back in that $10,000.
She's looking at me so like pleadingly like a mum. Like, Matt, please stop it.
You spent all the money on the bloody mattress, mate. Put away the phone. I think that's probably the best solution. Yes, Duncan.
So I know you mentioned that like lights and sounds and stuff like that affect sleep. I wanted to talk about temperature. Is that something that? Because I don't know. When I'm cold, I go to sleep, and when I'm hot, I'll stay awake. But I know a lot of other people are a bit different. Like they'll nod off if it's too warm in the room and stuff like that.
So
can you?
I mean,
actually, like Billy on that note. I mean, you must have to regulate that in terms of your products.
Yeah, and I think, as you mentioned it earlier on, we all have different shoe sizes, so we all have different sleeping preferences as well. So I think when you're setting up your room, then of course you've got to think about whether you're a side sleeper, a front sleeper, or a back sleeper. But then also if you are a cold sleeper or a hot sleeper. And then start to think about what are the different elements So from the mattress, what are the type of materials that are used? If you're a cool sleeper, then or a warm sleeper, you should maybe be looking for more natural products that will keep you cool at night. But then also, if you think of your bedding as well. So of course, right now we're getting into autumn, and this is terrible weather coming from Scotland. This is like the height of our summer. We only have it for 2 weeks a year. But really thinking about those materials that you're using. So cotton's perfect for those warmer nights to keep you cool as well. Yeah.
I would say as well, just in terms of the science of it, the biological rhythms that I was talking about earlier, our core body temperature shows a rhythm as well. So it peaks in the early evening, and then it's at its lowest at around 2 to 3 in the morning, and that's where you see a lot of deaths with elderly people, because that's at the core body temperature minimum. But you tend to get better sleep in cooler environments. As you said, like, it's not the same for everybody, but
you sort of cozy,
having,
that
having
kind
the
of
room a
concept
bit cooler as opposed to a bit hotter is better.
I read once, because I do a lot of travel in hotels, that if you set the thermostat to 17 degrees, which feels cold, but that is the optimum
17, 18
condition,
degrees,
because often in hotels they have that quite heavy doonas. So when you wake up in the morning, you're quite cold, but you'll sleep like an absolute log, as my hot tip there for you. Yes, back there.
I actually had a bit of a follow-up question on the fibre type one. So say synthetic fibres versus natural fibres. Has there been any work done on the impacts of sleep on fibre type?
That might be a good one for Thea or Billy.
We haven't done research on fibre type, but we've done surveys, informal surveys about texture and about colour. And so we've asked people, what kind of colours do you like in your bedroom? What kind of textures do you like? And also, what is your favorite object in the bedroom? And actually, quite often, it was the rug. It was a soft rug. It wasn't even the bed, which also tells us what I was saying before, that the bedroom or the sleep space is just becoming more and more multifunctional. So maybe I'm lying on the rug to read a book, or I have a fur that you have in the other room. I have a fur, I take that on the bed, and that's a really soft and cozy material. So I think texture and how things feel is very, very important, because it adds to that, what I've said before, this multisensory environment, and you want to feel comfortable. You don't want to have a material that is clingy to your skin or that heats up and so you sweat terribly. So I think natural is absolutely, that's also what our survey, what our participants said, natural material, light colors, but also 1 or 2 soft, huggy, silky, velvety
You have hit on
materials.
One of my real passion points in life is to create the ultimate bed. And when I was living in America in 2012, I had a lot of free time. So I took a huge deep dive into sheeting, bedding sheets. And let me talk you through Egyptian
Please
cotton.
do.
You would have thought
we don't have that much time, Matt, but if you've got some findings to
Because
share.
you go Egyptian cotton, 1,000 thread count's got to be the best, but it's not very scratchy. So I switched to bamboo cotton. I read on one of the forums that bamboo was all the rage. Very soft, like an old shirt, but doesn't have any structural integrity, so you can't make it. And so I switched. No, that was jersey knit. And then you go to bamboo, because people like bamboo's all the rage, but it's a little bit warm.
Pandas, yeah.
Soft sateen is where your money's at. Soft sateen sheets are the best. The perfect combination
Wow,
between
you
light
really
and
did your research.
and
like
structural integrity.
What about a raw linen?
I wouldn't go raw linen. Come on, don't be an idiot.
Well, we had Sarah Wilson here this morning, who appears to be a sleep expert. She's got a very, very tight routine, as anyone who was here this morning can attest. And
Raw linen.
for her. So, you know,
Getting rid of the
horses for
soft sateen,
courses.
going to raw linen.
Yeah. Any other questions? I think we're good. Oh, yes, please.
For Elise, as a sleep researcher,
Yes.
you obviously talk about this all the time. What rules do you have for your own sleep, kind of during the day or in the evening, that you are kind of non-negotiables for you?
Interestingly, Elise was saying before, sleep researchers traditionally have atrocious sleep because they have to study everyone else while they're sleeping.
Yeah. So you sleep at the wrong times. You just look at other people
So
and
you're
be
exhausted.
jealous. I mean, I'm very aware of my own sleep and the environment that I'm in. So in terms of natural light, like we've talked about a lot, you know, maximising it in the morning, limiting it in the evening. Caffeine, huge thing. And some people think, oh, it just wears off after an hour or two. That's not quite right. It depends on the individual, but it can take up to 6 hours. So if you're having a coffee at 4 or 5 in the evening, that's not going to help your sleep. So I think about the times that I have caffeine, when I exercise, exposure to light. So I try, but as we all know, it's not exactly like that all the time, and there are times when you have to chop and change. I would say, though, that I've come to Australia, I've done the trip 6 times now, and I've never had jet lag. So I've managed it quite well.
How do you manage
but
that?
I have to practice what I preach.
Business class.
Yeah.
Definitely not, no.
What's your secret then to managing jet lag?
It's not, I mean, it's a bit complex, depends on the individual way of flying, when you're flying.
What works for you? We want to know.
It's a bit too complicated to explain at this
You've got
point,
one of those
but
pods at home, don't you?
I just carry it around me, pop out.
Yeah, but I think we all have a way of dealing. I, for example, I try to stay awake all day, and I won't give in to sleep all day because I figure by the time you get around to night time, you get a really solid sleep. My husband, the total opposite. He thinks you should just go with the natural flow of sleep when you arrive at a foreign destination, and we're just on totally 2 different pages. Is there a secret to it?
It depends, like where you're flying to and how long you're going for. So on a business trip, you know, that you're just there for 2 days, sometimes it's better to stay in your home time zone and not actually try and shift. So, you know, limiting light exposure in the new place at the right time. If you're going for longer, there's certain things you can try and start shifting yourself before you actually go, so that you're already in that process, so you're kind of dealing with it before you get there, and then it's less of an impact once you arrive.
Or you can get a job that requires you getting up at 3:30 because then you're already awake, you know, and jet lag is actually a benefit. Any other questions before we wrap up? I do want to give everyone a chance. Billy mentioned some of the things you can plug into the mattress selector over there about sleeping on your side, sleeping on your back, whether you get hot when you sleep. You can sort of plug all those factors in, and Caesar will take you through them as well. That'll help choose the optimum mattress for you, and also kind of customize it to if your partner doesn't like to sleep the way that you sleep as well, so that can help. And also if you fill out the questionnaire over there, you can go in the running to win a limited edition rug. You probably have already entered, hopefully. That will be given away towards the end of the day as well. Highly sought after, I'm reliably informed. Billy can't even get one. He wants one.
And I'm
It's
actually
keep
good
off
friends
rug.
with our global... Sorry?
You'll sell it to...
okay.
All right, okay. We've got a bit of,
Yeah,
bit of
okay.
eBay
I might
trading.
come and see you later on. then.
Yeah. It's called a keep-off rug, very highly sought after, so make sure you go into the running for that. As Thea mentioned too, at 4 o'clock this afternoon, there'll be some of the researchers and some of the students from UTS taking you through some of the projects. Between 1:30 and 3:30 this afternoon as well, you can actually put together your own aromatherapy pillow. We talk about the senses and the smells to help you sleep at night time as well with a sleep specialist who'll be able to help you deal with that while your kids are dealt with elsewhere, if that helps for you, and the other parents in the room. It's also going to wrap up this evening here with a story time, more of a sort of comedy show as well. So if you can stick around or come back, you're very, very welcome to. But in the meantime, enjoy the hospitality, enjoy the fermented foods, enjoy the scenery, and enjoy your day. And thank you so much to all of our panel for all of the insight. Sleep well, everyone. Sleep well tonight.